Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I talk a lot about prison, and I talk about prison reform, and I talk about prison stories, and really at the core of all this is trauma and the fact that we're not healing it because people do not make a rational decision to go out and commit a crime. People do not make a rational decision to go out and kill themselves with drugs or kill themselves with crazy behavior. It comes from a place of unhealthiness. It comes from trauma. It comes from addiction. It comes from poverty. It comes from desperation. And the more that we continue to try to punish these things away, the more that we're not being honest with ourselves. If a kid acts badly and we beat the crap out of him, he's not going to get better. If somebody acts poorly and we yell at them without giving them any kind of solution or direction forward, they're not going to change their behavior in a positive way. They're probably going to feel a sense of shame. They're probably going to feel a sense of hopelessness. They're probably going to feel a sense of lacking self-worth. And oftentimes we do these things because that's what's been done to us, or that's what we know, or that's what feels comfortable. And so, one of the reasons I don't, for example, argue with trolls when they say horrible or terrible things is because I know that they're coming out of a place of pain. Nobody says a horrible, cruel thing when they're just in a happy, healthy place and having a good day. They say it when they're hurting. And that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get the base of this hurt. So, I talked about it a little bit the other day. The criminal justice system right now is focused only on punishing the perpetrator. So, we have a victim who has suffered a crime, a person who has survived a crime, whether it was violent or nonviolent or whatever the nature of it. And yet, all of the attention and resources of the criminal justice system are focused on punishing the perpetrator. None are focused on healing the victim or healing the larger community, because often these are much larger issues. This isn't just an individual or two individuals, this is a larger community issue. So, by doing that, we're actually ignoring the needs of the victim or the survivor of a crime. And the resources that are going to punish the prisoner could, at least in part, be spent on making sure that we're healing and providing services for the victim or the survivor of the crime. Then, when I went to a victim impact program that was very powerful for me, I asked the woman who was there, who had been put in a wheelchair by someone's criminal act, and I said, what is the most important thing the person who hurt you can do? What can someone do to make amends in any kind of way? And she said, don't do it again. And that has forever shaped my move forward. And not every victim or survivor is going to say this. Some people are going to clamor for blood. Some people are going to say, I want this person locked up for the rest of their life. And that's okay. It's not anyone's position to judge how a victim or survivor of crime reacts. But in the interactions that I've had, both on social media and in person, the majority of the people that I've talked to who have been victims of crime have said my number one thing is I want them to be accountable and I want them to not do it again. So the problem is, not only is our system not providing resources to heal the victim or the survivor of crime, it's also not providing resources to make the person, the perpetrator, be accountable, nor to heal to make sure they're unlikely to do it again. This is really unfortunate because what we're doing is we're actually ignoring the needs and the wishes of the victims of crime. We're saying we're doing this to protect them and we're doing this on their behalf. I even had somebody on social media say, she had been the victim of a crime, and she had talked to the prosecutor and said, hey, I don't want this person sent away to prison for a long time. This is not what I want. I want them to get some kind of help. Like, I know this came out of a place of sickness. And instead, the prosecutor asked for the maximum sentence. And when we claim to be doing justice, when we claim to be doing the right thing, yet we're ignoring the needs and the wishes of the person that was hurt, I think there's a problem. Now, on the other side of that, we have an issue, and I don't know the solution to this issue. Sometimes the victim of crime, whether it's violent or nonviolent, want that person locked up for the rest of their life, or want that person put to death, or want just some severe and awful punishment for that person. And it's hard to find that balance because we want to respect the needs and the wishes of the victim. We want to give them a voice. We want them to be heard. But it's a question of at what point do we impose inhumane punishments on other people, and what does that say about us as a society? So the idea of healing and accountability, so that the perpetrator, the victim, and the community come together for a process of healing. That's what restorative justice is. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about the idea. Now, I want to say, first of all, I do not believe that victims or survivors of crime should have to participate. It should not be mandatory. There is a much higher success rate and there's a much higher satisfaction rate for victims and survivors of crime who go through a restorative process than those who go through a punitive process. But nonetheless, it should not be mandatory because some people just cannot or do not want to reopen that wound, whatever it is. And we talk about crime and nonviolent crime. We say, oh, well, if nobody was hurt, it's not a big deal. Well, if someone stole from your business and you were already struggling financially and you were struggling to provide for your family and you were struggling in the most basic ways and now you have some kind of debt that you can't make up for, you have to buy new windows for your store or your inventory is gone, you've been damaged financially, that can cascade into something terrible. That can cascade into losing a client or into losing your business or being unable to pay your mortgage. Sometimes the things we think of as nonviolent have huge effects because it's not just about the individual. There is, again, this concentric ring of effects of the things that we do. So violent crime, nonviolent crime, these things can have major effects. And again, we minimize it in many cases because there's this false dichotomy. We either say the victims of crime need all the focus and we need to focus on them, And generally that means somehow that punishing the perpetrator is by focusing on the victims of crime, which actually isn't. Or we say we need to focus on the perpetrators and we need to focus on reform and we need to abolish prisons. And I think that there's a place in between that focuses on healing and taking into account all of the people involved in the process and making sure that they have the resources that they need, and that coming out of this, everyone is more healed, more prepared, more able to move forward without without kind of perpetuating the violence we're claiming to contain. And it's just really unfortunate because I would like to see the victims and survivors of crime have a voice, and I would like for them to be heard, and I would like for them to be empowered. I would like for them to receive treatment and support and whatever it is that they need moving forward. I would also like to see people getting out of prison having received treatment and support so that they don't reoffend, so that they don't create future victims. Yet the narrative in our country is one of punishment. It is one of punitive, angry, vengeful justice. And I don't believe that's justice, because I don't believe we need to live an eye for an eye. I don't believe that that is going to make anybody happier. I don't believe that it's going to make anybody safer. I don't believe that it's going to make society any better. And I really hope that at some point we're able to move to a justice that is about healing and accountability rather than about vengeance.